Okay, so the question says, 4 teams are traveling to a tournament in cars and vans. Each team has no more than 3 coaches and 10 athletes. Okay, each car can take 5 members and each van can take 8. No more than 5 vans and 11 cars are available. Okay. So the first question says, I've copied mine all wonky. Create the system of inequalities. Okay, so what do we know here? So each team would be at most 13 people, right? Kind of this idea that all together on these teams, 13 times 4 teams. So the people are going to be less than or equal to 52. That's the highest amount of people we would have. Okay, so let's use, which letters do we want to do? We have cars and we have vans. Okay, so I'm going to go with a C for car and a V for van. So 5 people per car and 8 people per van. I got to keep that below 52 or equal to 52 because that's the most people I would have. There are no more than 5 vans. So vans we got to be below or equal to 5 and 11 cars. So cars has to be that. Are there any restrictions to my variables? They both have to be whole numbers, right? You can't have negative vans. You can't have 1.5 vans. They're whole numbers. Okay, what else we got? Let's graph this. Okay, so the first thing we had was what? Okay, we're going to graph this. On this one, it won't matter which label you put where. So we're just going to pick. So let's go cars, vans. The cars have to be less than or equal to 11. So I'd have to stop my cars here. Got to stop my cars there. The vans have to be less than or equal to 5. So we got to keep below that line. Okay, now I'm going to graph this other line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take turns making one 0. Okay, so vans. I'm going to cover the C up. How many vans will I have on my intercept? So I'm going to do this. 52 divided by 8 is 6.5. So on the vans, that's where the intercept would be. And on the cars, the intercept would be, so 52 divided by 5 is 10.4. And I have to be below that. So basically I can be in this zone. This is where I could be. That's the zone that would work. Because I have to be below that line, I have to be left of this line, and I have to be below the angled line. And on a graph, this would technically have the stippled on it, because I can't be everywhere. I can only be on the whole number spots. Okay, write an objective function to represent the number of vehicles. So the vehicles would equal the cars plus the vans. It's kind of awkward because I don't want to use two V's, but so that's why I did that. The vehicles would be the cars plus the vans. Okay, what combo would require the maximum number of vehicles? So the max number of vehicles would be over here if I'm going to take 10 cars. Because obviously vans are better to take because you're fitting more people in them, right? So cars, if you're taking cars, you're going to have more cars. And the minimum vehicles would be if I did, so this was the max, and that would be the minimum amount I could take, so 5 vans. Okay, did that one. So now flip to one that says Ed on it. Okay, Ed found spiders and crickets in his storage room. There were 20 or fewer spiders. So I'm going to write that already. Spiders was 20 or fewer. And 20 or more crickets. So the crickets were 20 or more. There were 45 or fewer crickets and spiders in total. So the spiders and crickets in total were less than or equal to 45. Spiders have 8 legs, crickets have 6 legs. So let's write legs equals 8 per spider and 6 per cricket. what combination would have the greatest legs? The least legs. So let's graph. Okay, so here is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go up to 50. And it doesn't matter what you pick for your labels. You can pick spiders on one and crickets on the other, just because I can see what's going on there. So I'll go spiders here and crickets here. Spiders have to be less than or equal to 20. So the spiders have to be below that line. The crickets have to be greater or equal to 20. So I have to be on that side. Okay, now I'm going to graph this third one. It'll be an angled one. So with this one, I'm going to cover each one up and figure out the intercepts. So if I cover up the C, the S intercept is 45. If I cover up the S, the C intercept is 45. And we have to be below that line. Okay, let's get all of these points that complete that. So this coordinate would be 45 crickets and no spiders. This coordinate would have been 20 crickets, no spiders. This coordinate was 20, 20. So 20 crickets, 20 spiders. And this one, you ready? I know that the height of it is 20, so 20 spiders. How many crickets would be on this line? So this is the diagonal line. So can you look here? If you have 20 spiders, how many crickets would there have been in this? It's got to make 45. So if there was 20 spiders, there would be 25 crickets. Does that make sense? Okay, can you tell which of those 4 points will make the greatest amount of legs? We can do them all, or we could just see. Should we check this out? Okay, so this point, 25 crickets. So 25 times 6 plus 20 spiders with 8. That would be 310 legs. Okay. Obviously that one's not going to be any more. What do you think on this one? 45 crickets. So 45 times 6. That's 270 legs. So that's, and this is obviously going to be less. So this one is going to give us the most legs. 25 crickets and 20 spiders. Which one of those would be the least amount of legs? Do you have an idea of which one of these points would have the least legs? I'm going to guess that coordinate because of what's been given, right? So 20 crickets would have 6 legs. So that'd be 120 legs. Okay, and obviously, if didn't talk about it, but the restrictions would be, that would be all stippled because you can only be whole numbers of spiders. Okay, last, we have a farmer planting wheat and barley. He wants no more than 100 hectares altogether. So the wheat plus the barley has to be no more than 1,000. Okay, this is the sentence that always tricks people. The farmer wants at least 3 times as many hectares of wheat as barley. So you got to write it almost backwards of what you read it. The wheat is going to be at least 3 times the barley. Does this make sense? The wheat is way more, so then the wheat is going to be tripled the barley. And why do people often make mistakes is because they read the 3 times as many wheat, and then they want to put the 3 on the wheat, but you don't. You put it on the opposite one, because the wheat is 3 times the barley. Okay. The yield per hectare of wheat is 50 bushels, and the yield of barley is 38. Wheat pays this much per bushel, and barley pays this much per bushel. Okay, so wheat. Let's talk about wheat. Per hectare, we're going to get 50 bushels. And then 525. So, therefore, the money per hectare that should be the total money per hectare. Because you're going to produce that many bushels, and then each bushel is worth that much. Okay, now let's do the same thing with barley. Each hectare would produce 38 bushels. Each bushel is worth 361, which would make so that's how much money is being produced per hectare. So we want to maximize the revenue. So here's my revenue sentence. Revenue will be 262.50 W's, however many hectares of wheat you have, plus 137.18 of barley. Okay, we're gonna try to maximize this. So I'm going to graph. And I'm gonna go $1,000. So each tick on my graph is going to be 100. So I went up to 1,000 just because I was looking up here. I saw that 1,000. Okay, when I look at my statements, I know on this one I want one of them to particularly be the y and one of them is going to be the x. And here's the one I'm looking at. I have a better time in my brain thinking like this, right? I don't like thinking x equals 3y. That's awkward for me. So I'm going to make W my y. So wheat and then barley. Let's do our calculator on this one. We can, if you want, you would be able to do it by hand, but okay, so let's pretend I'm in my calculator now. So here's what I'm comparing to with y's and x's. On this one, do you understand you can't type it in? You're going to have to move the x over. So that you can use your calculator, because you can't use it unless you just have a y equals. And my window, I'm going to want to go up to 1,000. Remember that. Scale of 100. Okay, so that's what I did. I did a window up to thousands on both, and both have scales of 100, just like my diagram. Okay, so now I'm just going to put this on my paper, what it looks like. By the way, I would have done this by hand. I would have covered each one, and each one would have an intercept of 1,000. Is that what your graph looks like? Each one crosses at 1,000. And on this one, it's always 3 times as much. So for instance, when this is 100, this would be 300. Because it's going to be 3 times as much. If this was 200, this would be 600. And if you're kind of stuck, you can always grabbing your calculator, do some trace. 100, 300, 200, 600. Okay? I noticed that when I move right and left, it goes up and down, but if I go the up down arrows, then it switches onto the other line. Did you notice that? Sometimes I want to go to this line or this line. So that's the up down buttons. When you move right and left, it just goes on that. and the up, down jumps to the other equation. Okay, I want to be less than this line, but I want to be greater than this line. Okay, so I'm going to test these 2 points. Which one would you think would make me more money? So this point would have 0 barley and 1,000 wheat. Because that's 0, 1,000. So how much money would you get if you had 1,000 wheat and no barley? So can you take that number and times it by 1,000? So you're making $262,500. Okay, this is why I did this on my calculator. I would like this intersection point. So second, calculate intersection, enter, enter, enter. 250, 750. So 250 barley, 750 wheat. How much money are you going to make if you sell that much? So 250 barley. So I'm going to times that by the 137. So this is what I'm doing. The 250 barley, and each barley is worth 137. Okay, so which one made more money? This. That one made the most money. Okay, obviously this was the other intersection point, but that's 0, 0, so that's going to make no money. Okay? If I ever asked you restrictions on these variables, these ones don't have to be whole numbers, because you don't have to have exactly a whole number of hectares. You can have 120.3 hectares. That's fine. But you would have to have them greater or equal to 0, right? Because you can't have negative hectares.